Hi everyone, like the slide on your screen says, we are going to start with a quick recap of factorising algebraic expressions, okay? It's a tool that we will use to simplify our fractions, so it's really important that we remember this. Now it should be nice and clear in your head because obviously we've just been preparing for our December prelim before the holidays there, so it should be clear in your head, but we'll do a wee quick recap just in case. Alright, so the first one here, we've got 3x minus 12. Now remember, we've got three questions to ask ourselves. Number one, is there a common factor? Number two, is the difference of two squares? Or number three, is it a trinomial? And you can see I've got three examples here, so I'm sure you can guess that there's going to be one of each type. So this first example, we have a common factor here, and the highest common factor here is, oops, let me actually switch my pen on. Highest common factor is 3. So I'm going to take that 3 outside the bracket. Now 3 times what gives me 3x, that's 3 times x, and 3 times what gives me negative 12, that's a takeaway 4, so my final answer there is 3x takeaway 4. Now number 2, this is a difference of two squares. Because you've got a square number, subtract a square number, so we're going to have double brackets, almost identical. The letter goes in the start because the letter's at the start of your question, and at the end we're going to square root that 25, so that's going to give me a 5 there, and one bracket's got a plus, one bracket's got a minus. And for the third recap, the final type is a difference, sorry I'm talking nonsense, the final type is a trinomial, so that's again going to have the same shape as before. It's going to have a double bracket, but each bracket's not going to be as similar as it was here. Now we're going to, again, the letter's at the start, so we're going to put the letter at the start of our brackets, and now I'm going to have to think of factors of 3 that are going to give me a 4. So I've got a plus 3, oh, handwriting's gone funny, and a plus 1. So 3 and 1 gives me 4, and times and 3 and 1 together will give me 3, so that's my correct answer there. Now your teacher might have taught you a different way to factorise trinomials. That's absolutely fine, you can use any technique you're used to, so stick with what your teacher's already told you so far. Right, now on to the nitty gritty of today's lesson. We're going to be applying these skills directly. Now if you look closely at this example here, okay, you can see that it looks slightly different from yesterday's, and the reason for that is we've got some adding and subtracting signs in here. Yesterday we were just cancelling things off left, right and centre because the whole fraction, everything in the top line was all multiplied together and everything in the bottom line was all multiplied together. But here we've got a wee addition sign, and if I quickly scroll through you can see there's a subtraction sign there, an add and a subtract there, and so on and so forth. So the fractions are looking a little bit more complicated every single time. So what I'm going to do is, for each line that has an adding or a subtracting sign on it, we are going to factorise that. Okay, so that top line there, we've got 4a plus 8b. Now you can do this working at the side if you like. If I factorise that, my highest common factor I've got here is a 4, and that will leave me with an a plus 2b inside the brackets. Okay, so that's from my top line, so I'm going to stick that back in to my top line. Okay, and the bottom line is just a plain old 8. I can't do anything with that, that's just the number 8. I can't factorise that. Well, I could, but I'm not going to bother putting brackets or anything into that. It's just a plain old number, so I'm going to leave that alone. Now, because I've factorised that top line, I can start cancelling things off. Now let's focus in on these bits here, the plain old numbers. 4 over 8, we know that that simplifies into a half. So I'm going to simplify that down into a half. And that a plus 2b, I've just ignored that. So let's just stick that back in the top line again. Okay, now let's make that even neater. We don't need a 1 outside the bracket, you can ignore that. So you're just left with a plus 2b on the top line and a 2 on the bottom line. Okay, if you wanted to do that orange bit of working, in here, you absolutely can. I just think it complicates things a little bit more, so I just do my thinking, oh, drop something. I just do my thinking over at the side there. So let's have a wee shot at example number 2. We're doing the exact same thing here. My bottom line here, that's got a subtraction sign in it, so I'm going to factorise it. So I've got 2xy take away xz. Now my highest common factor here is an x, so let's take that common factor of x out, and inside I've got a 2 and a y left for that first term, because I've taken that x out, remember, and then I've taken that x out, so I'm just left with the z here. Let's make my z's like that actually, so they don't look like 2's. Okay? So that's what I have just got when I've factorised that bottom line. So let's put that in to my question. I've left the top line alone, and the bottom line has been factorised, so I've got x and then a 2y minus z. Okay. Now we're going to look for things matching on the top and bottom to cancel out. So let's see any plain old numbers we've got. We've got a 3 in the top, and there are no plain old numbers on their own on the bottom, so we're just going to leave that alone. The next thing I'm going to focus in on are the plain old x's. So I've got an x in the top and an x in the bottom. They're matching and they are both multiplying what they're touching. So I'm going to go ahead and just cancel them out. So what I'm left with is a 3 in the top and a 2y take away z on the bottom. And that's my final answer there. Now bear with me, the examples are going to get harder and harder, so please just watch the video to the end, don't try and skip ahead. Okay. Example number 3, we're going to factorise that top line here, and we're going to have a look to see if I can factorise the bottom line, but let's just jump straight into the top line. Okay, there's a difference of 2 squares. Okay, that should be joined up, it's just the way that this is formatted, it's gone a little bit funny. So x squared minus 49, that's a difference of 2 squares. So when I factorise that, that gives me an x plus 7 and an x minus 7. So that's my top line there. The bottom line, I'm going to leave alone because that won't factorise any further. X plus 7, there's no common factor there. There's no difference of 2 squares in that bottom line, and there's not a trinomial in the bottom line. So I'm just going to leave that bottom line alone. The only thing I've done is I've put the brackets round it. Now, if I look here, some of you might have already spotted this, but I have 2 brackets that are matching each other perfectly, okay? Now the key point here is it's matching brackets, okay? So that thing that I've highlighted in yellow on the top, and that thing that I've highlighted in yellow in the bottom, they are bracketed, so they're allowed to cancel one another out, okay? If there's one in the top and one in the bottom, they're going to cancel each other out. So all I'm left with is an x minus 7, which appears on the top. Now if you like, you can keep the brackets round it. It's up to you. Right, we're halfway through the examples now. We are almost there. Okay. Example number 4. If you look here, the top line will factorise and the bottom line will factorise. So let's do both of them. I'll just do it at the side here. So the top line, that is 2x squared take away 50. We can take out a common factor of 2 here, so let's go ahead and do it. And if I look closely, inside that bracket, we've also got a difference of 2 squares. So I've factorised that as well. Now let's go for the bottom line. My handwriting's atrocious, my pen's not working very well today. Right, so in the bottom line, I've got 5x plus 25. And that has a common factor of 5, so I'm going to take out a 5. And then I'm left with x plus 5 in the middle, in the bracket. Now, let's put these back into the right place. So the top line, we factorise to get that. And the bottom line, I factorise to get that. Now let's look for matching brackets. That's an x plus 5 and that's an x plus 5, so they can cancel one another out. Let's just score them off. There isn't a bracket to match that x minus 5, so that's going to stay. And then if we look at the plain old numbers, your 2 over 5, that's a fraction that won't simplify. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to rewrite that. It's very, very important that you rewrite your last line. Okay, you can't leave anything with scores out, you've got to write it out nice and neat at the end. So we've got 2x minus 5 on the top line, because remember that green bit is cancelled out by the one on the bottom. And then we're just left with a 5 on the bottom line. Okay, now that's us went through all the techniques. 5 and 6 are just going to show us different shapes. Okay, so just keep going with it, okay? Don't skip any examples, make sure you've got them all down and you're understanding everything. Right, that top line, x plus 1, that won't factorise, so let's just go ahead and write that down as is. We know it's not going to factorise, okay? There's no common factor, it's not a difference of two squares, and there's no trinomial involved there. The bottom line will factorise. If we've got x squared plus 4x plus 3, that factorises, that's a trinomial, so we've got a double bracket. We're dealing with the letter x, and factors of 3, that will give me 4, it's a plus 3 and a plus 1. So I'm going to take that answer and I'm going to put it into the bottom line now. So I've got x plus 3 and x plus 1. Okay. So now let's just stick brackets around that. We'll group that all together. And you can see that this and this are matching. So in the bottom line, I'm left with an x plus 3. And in the top line, I've scored out everything that's written down there. But I can't leave that top line blank. So this is the same as when you were doing your indices stuff before. Remember, we don't leave the top line blank. We just put a 1 on it. And that's my final answer. My answer for 5. And last but not least, okay, we finally made the end of it. Example number 6. You can see here that both your top and your bottom line will factorise. So I'm going to take them separately out the side. We're going to do the top. And I'm going to have m squared minus 4m plus 3. That's a trinomial, so we're going to end up with double brackets. M at the start of both brackets because we're dealing with the letter M there. Factors of 3, that will give me negative 4. My two factors are minus 3 and minus 1. If you times them together, it gives you a positive 3. If you add them together, it gives you a negative 4. So that's my top line factorised. My bottom line, okay, we've got m squared minus 2m minus 3. Again, it's a trinomial, so let's put those double brackets down. We're dealing with the letter m, and it looks similar here, okay? The numbers, or the template rather, is quite similar, but the numbers are actually different, okay? So my factors of negative 3 are negative 3 and a positive 1. If we times them together, it's going to give me a negative 3. Let's just check that adding them together will land me where I want to be here. So I've got minus 3, add 1, gives me minus 2. So that's my bottom line factorised. So I've done the hard bit. Now it's just a case of copying it into the right place and scoring the matching bits off. So the top line, we said it was m minus 3, m minus 1. And the bottom line we said was m minus 3 and n plus 1. So it's very, very similar here. Now these two second brackets, the ones with the ones in them, they are not identical. That's a minus 1 and that's a plus 1, so we can't use them to cancel one another out. However, these two brackets here, they're identical, so they will cancel one another out. Oops. So what I'm left with is an n minus 1 on the top line and an n plus 1 on the bottom line. And that's it.